Hey VC. This will be my last video for a couple weeks because exams are coming up. I have my recital exam in about 2 weeks and I need to spend time making music instead of talking about music. But I did pick up a couple of records in the past couple weeks that I wanted to share with you. I've been continuing to collect Music Matter Blue Notes because I know they're getting scarce, and I picked up one at my local record store just yesterday. Al 33 Tour in Montreal. It's a really, really fantastic store if no one's been there. One of the best selections of just about any type of music, but mostly Japanese pressings. This store is very, very good about stocking Japanese pressings. Apparently the owner goes there a lot, so I managed to find a lot of great Japanese pressings of rock and jazz records. And of course their jazz and classical section is really huge, which is always nice in a record store because a lot of record stores are very heavy in the rock section or just heavy in the new cheaper reissue section. These guys really cover a wide gambit of stuff. I think it's probably the best record store I've stumbled across in Montreal, so definitely check them out if you're ever in the city. First up, a Blue Note that I hadn't really heard before, but Audiophile Laws talked about it in one of his videos, and it made me go listen to it, and I really enjoyed it. It's I'm not really that familiar with Freddie Hubbard's stuff, but I listened to a couple tracks and I really enjoyed the music, and I knew this is kind of one of the big Blue Note titles, and so I saw it in my store and decided to pick it up. I haven't actually gotten a chance to listen to it yet, hopefully very soon, but it's Music Matters double 45, so I know it's going to sound absolutely incredible. Another Music Matters pressing that I picked up was the new 33 edition of the amazing Bud Powell Scene Changes. I did a little research on Bud Powell and about his recorded output, and it really puts this album into context for me. Listening to Bud Powell play on this album, I was struck with his kind of natural melodicism he has. All his solos aren't just scales or ditties or cool technical things. He's really crafting very beautiful melodies very quickly on the fly in his improvisatory passages. And I think that's a really great summary of the way he approaches piano and the way he approaches music making. I think this is a really great swan song for Bud Powell. From what I understand, he didn't really put out much solo output after this, unfortunately. Those of you who know about Bud Powell know that his story is pretty tragic. He had a long history of, some would say, mental health issues. It also, was confounded by the racism of the day and the harmful policies of the criminal justice system and the mental health system in our country in the 60s. So unfortunately, his genius never really was able to flourish because he dealt with all those problems in his heyday, but we are left with a really great recorded output. And this was really his only big Blue Note of the late 50s, early 60s era. I think this was recorded 59 this came out. And about after that, he kind of retired from major recording. He plays as a sideman on a couple albums, but this is his last really solo piece, and I think it's absolutely beautiful and haunting. So definitely from an older school of jazz. He wasn't really from the hard bop school that was coming up in Blue Note at that time. He was from kind of a more Thelonious Monk, Dizzy Gillespie kind of style of piano playing. Moving on to rock and roll, we have a Japanese pressing of the Moody Blues, To Our Children's Children. This is an original 1969 Japanese pressing, and I was really, the place Al 33 Tour in Montreal, they have a plethora of great Japanese pressings, but you don't always see the really, really old ones. The Japanese were making a lot of records in the mid-70s, late 70s, early 80s. Their pressing plants weren't really pumping out a ton of stuff in the 60s, from what I can gather, just because the 60s pressings, Japanese pressings, don't come up that often. So I saw this and I looked it up on Discogs and said, it came out the year the album came out in '69. and checked out the record, and it's absolutely flawless, which is kind of incredible to think about, because you got a 40 plus year old record that looks untouched. It looks like whoever owned this before never even played it. And I've been getting Japanese pressings of the Moody Blues albums simply because I have a couple American pressings at home, and I found them in thrift store, half price books, or local record store for $8-9. They're not expensive, and I eyeball them. I'm pretty good at picking out clean records in a store, even regardless of the lighting. I can find some lighting, and I can see what's going to be noisy and what's not. But no matter how picky I was, all my U.S. pressed Moody Blues records sound really noisy and really bad. And there's groove distortion, like they were all played with cheap misaligned turntables, which they may have well been, but I've gone through a couple now, and I'm beginning to think it's a problem with the pressings themselves, the Duran pressings. They're just not good quality. And yeah, I could try to hunt down UK pressings. I'm sure the vinyl quality was not much better, and I'm sure it would be very expensive. So for the Moody Blues, I sound sick of the Japanese pressings. They sound really good. I have a Japanese pressing on the Threshold of a Dream, and I have a Speaker's Corner pressing of Days of Future Past, which is my favorite Moody Blues album. I think it's most people's favorite Moody Blues album. It's a really, really fantastic album. I think it's most people's favorite Moody Blues album. Is the one that gets all the big reviews. If you have to own one Moody Blues album, I would say Days of Future Past is probably the one to get. But their other stuff from the late '60s is also really good, and I wanted to fill this hole in my collection and have a nice, clean, good sounding copy of this record. So I'm excited to. I haven't actually gotten a chance to listen to this yet, but the vinyl looks pristine, and I'm excited to hear an older Japanese record, because usually the Japanese records I get are all late '70s. I mean, this is late '60s. It might sound different. It might be, they might not have been doing the same stuff EQ wise they were doing 10 years later. When I went to my record store yesterday, I didn't go to record store day this year. There just wasn't enough incentive for me. There wasn't enough things I saw on the list that I really wanted. There was really only one release that I wanted, and it was the Robotic Empire tribute to Nirvana's album Bleach. And I have the previous two Nirvana tribute albums that Robotic Empire put out, the one they did of In Utero and the one they did of Nevermind, and they assembled a cast of some of my favorite bands in modern post-hardcore, punk, hard rock music. And the lineup on the one they were doing for this year, which is a tribute to Nirvana's album Bleach, again, really fantastic. Really, really, really solid lineup of some bands. The Fall of Troy are on it, and of course the Fall of Troy are one of my favorite bands of all time. And, this is technically their first recorded release in 6-7 years, because their new album, their comeback album, is not out yet. And of course Circus Survive are on it, Defeater, The Saddest Landscape, which is my favorite Screamo band. So I was really looking forward to that, but there wasn't enough else on the record store day list that I wanted. And I just played a concert that Friday night. I had to play another concert that Saturday night, and I didn't feel like waking up at the crack of dawn to go sit in a record store day line and possibly be disappointed. So I figured, what, it'll come up. I'll find it on eBay eventually, or Discogs, or they'll do a regular pressing, which they ended up doing a regular pressing. You can buy it online on Robotic Empire online distro. You can buy the non-record store day pressing of this album. But I was in my local record store yesterday, and they had a bin of leftover record store day stuff, and lo and behold, Doused in Mud, Soaked in Bleach was sitting in there. It was the only copy in there. I guess there wasn't a huge demand for it here in Montreal. I don't know. I guess no one knew what it was, or I got lucky, because in New York these Nirvana tribute albums sold out at all the record stores I went to. I couldn't find the In Utero tribute in New York. The records, I think that was Record Store Day 2013. Sold out everywhere. This, I found it not even trying. So of course I picked this up. It was on my list anyway. Again, haven't listened to it yet, but I've listened to a couple tracks online. The Circus Survive cover is really great. Circus Survive always do really, really good Nirvana covers because they were able to get that really gritty sound. I think Anthony really enjoys singing that like Kurt Cobain gritty vocal style, vocal fry. And of course, the lineup of bands on here is fantastic. Defeater, the Fall of Troy, This Will Destroy You. Daughters are also on here. Daughters are an incredible band. Young Widows, Thou. I've heard really great things about Thou. I haven't listened to them enough. So really excited to hear this. Of course, Bleach is a really great Nirvana album, really underrated Nirvana album. It's them at their most raw and gritty. And it was what the band was all about before it went very, very commercialized. And not saying that their commercialized music wasn't good. I mean, Nevermind is a good album, In Utero is an incredible album, but Bleach is a totally different kind of thing. So, very, very excited for that. And then I picked up. I ordered this online. Because I was starting to see it sell out some online stores, so I figured I better not sit on this. I have Blood, Sweat, and Tears self-titled. This is the double 45 pressing from ORG, mastered from the original tapes by Bernie Grunman. I think like 2 copies of this album back home in Texas, not this pressing, late or mid-70s Columbia pressings, not the original 2i label, but I think it's the wraparound Columbia label. And they sound pretty good. The problem is they're just kind of noisy. I think I eventually found a clean copy, and it sounded pretty good. And I didn't really have a desire to seek out another copy. I like the album. I think it's a great album, really rock and jazz fusion album. But I thought, my 70s pressing, it sounds good. I knew that that ORG did a double 45 pressing, but, I was happy with what I had. And then last month at Montreal Audio Festival here in the city, I went to that, and in the Riga Harbeth room, Riga and Harbeth had a really, really great setup at Montreal Audio Fest this year. It was, big Harbeth monitors, their top of the line integrated amplifier. I forget what the MSRP on that integrated amp was, but it was Riga's best integrated amplifier. RP8, or the RP8 table with I think it was the Ortofon Cadenza Black cartridge on it. Was it an Ortofon card on it? I don't remember the card on it. And really crazy phono stage. It was a really, really good sounding room. I heard some good sounding rooms at Montreal Audio Fest, especially the Joseph Audio room and the VPI room were both really, really incredible rooms. But the Harbeth room was there was a different vibe in the Harbeth room. It was a rock room. They were playing a lot of rock, like classic rock records. A lot of audio shows you go and you hear the same, jazz trios in every room. The female vocals, Diana Krall, all that. It's not all of it's bad music. Some of it's bad music. Some of it is certainly bad music. And then you get the classical, but it's never good classical. It's always, stupid showy overtures because they want to show off, the dynamic range. I'm digressing. The Riga Harbeth room was a totally different scene, and they were playing rock and roll, and it was just this really, really enjoyable room. And they had a stack of records there, and I was flipping through, and I asked them if we could listen to this because I saw it in the stack, and they put it on, and I was floored. Again, it was a really good system and a really good setup, but a really good system and a really good setup aren't going to do anything for a bad quality pressing or a bad quality recording. A good system brings out all the greatness in a really good recording, and that's what it did here. And I'll tell you, I gained a whole new appreciation for the album. I think everyone around me was nodding their head and just getting into the music. It had an impact on you. It wasn't just, oh, this is good playing, oh, this is a good song. It was, oh, like we're feeling what the musicians are trying to say to us, what the musicians are trying to display to us, to impart on the listener. And that's always the goal of a a good recording. That should be the goal of musicians everywhere. So when a pressing really accomplishes that, like this did, you're really moved, and it left an impression on me, and I said, I have to get this because it's so much better than the original, and I stand by that. And I listened to it on my system here in Montreal, and it also sounded amazing, sounded really good. I can't wait to listen to this on my system in Texas, because I'm sure that will be a whole different monster. But if you've slept on this, if you've been thinking about picking this up, I would do so soon. Places are starting to sell out, and I can't recommend it enough. It's a great album, great music, classic rock record, rock jazz fusion, whatever you want to call it, and very enjoyable. One final acquisition in the last couple weeks was a 7-inch I got from, again, my local store. I saw they had it listed on Discogs, so I just went and bought it in person and saved on the shipping. This is a mid-2000s Screamo 7-inch by a band called Cease Upon the Capitol. It's their 7-inch called The End of History. Cease Upon the Capitol were a fairly prolific yet kind of unknown, even in the world of Screamo, kind of unknown Screamo band. Their stuff is a little faster pace and a little... it has better than average production for a Screamo record. And I was listening to them a little bit online, and I really enjoyed it. And saw that my local store had this, so I picked it up. It was $3. This isn't an original. This is a reissue done by Meat Cube label, and Meat Cube label is a label that I have a few releases from. They specialize in mostly doing reissues for the North American market of foreign Screamo and punk bands. I know they do some stuff for they do cassette releases from Heaven in Her Arms and some of the Japanese bands in the scene. They do some stuff from some of the Southeast Asian bands. Their distro online has a lot of good stuff on it. This is one they put out themselves, and it's I believe Cease Upon the Capitol is a U.S. band. Could be wrong, but I think they're a U.S. band, so I don't know why Meat Cube decided to reissue it, other than it's a really great recording. This little 7-inch has 4 songs on it, and they're all really impactful and contain everything that I love about the genre in it. So if you're looking to dip your toes into Screamo, if you've never heard, good underground Screamo before, maybe listen to this, Cease Upon the Capitol. You can probably find it. I'll put a link below to one of their songs if you want to check them out. Really great stuff. And that's everything for now. I'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Bye, VC.